Alrighty. Hi, everybody. My name's Elaine, and along with Lorena and Mariatta, we're here to present virtually 9 years of PyLadies, lessons learned, and what comes next. We're going to go to the next slide. So, awesome. So, here's all our contact info. We're from various PyLadies chapters from around the world. I hail from the great city of Toronto up in Canada. Mariatta's from PyLadies Vancouver, and Lorena is in PyLadies Chicago. So just to start on origin stories, like how did we all get started? So for me, this all started when I decided to graduate from school, and I'm a full-blown journalist with the Canadian Public Broadcaster, the CBC. And yep, who knew that once you graduate from journalism school, you become a tiny unicorn with cute little headphones and a microphone. So as a journalist, I was always trying to improve my skills and kind of see what the next big thing was. And way back in the day, when I graduated in 2010, there was something called computer-assisted reporting. And from there, I discovered this magical language called Python was really good at parsing languages and kind of helped me like scrape some data and build upon these like investigative skills that I wanted to get super strong on. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. But where I went to J school, like no one really knows what programming is. So where do I go when I want to meet more other Python users? Well, enter Python Toronto and PyLadies Toronto. So around that was just around 2013, so it was a while ago. And I remember going to like a Python Toronto users group. I'm sure a few of you have been to such user groups in your local area as well. And for me, it was incredibly intimidating. On any given meetup, this would be like a room of 80 very experienced, mostly males, developers all want to get together and chat and kind of more or less nerd out on the Python language. And I found it a little bit hard to navigate, especially, as someone who's not from a traditional programming or STEM background. And then on top of that, being new to programming, new to the tech community, and now in the space of all these people, it was really hard not to shut down. So many experienced developers, and I didn't know if people were open to, a newbie such as myself. And, being in my 20s, I was like, and female in a room of 80 guys, it became kind of like I'm not too, I didn't feel like I belonged. And even though people were super welcoming and super nice, I had to start asking, like, where are the people like me? Because even when these nice gentlemen were here and helping out, it was kind of hard not to, automatically start thinking like, oh, are you only helping me because you want to date me? Or are you just here because you care that I want to learn this programming language and you're able to answer some of my questions? So in order to start looking for people like me, let's go back to the very, very beginning, to the very start of how PyLadies got started over 9 years ago. So I was not the only one, apparently, that had a very similar question. Back in 2011, there was a PyLadies kickoff at PyCon 2011 in Atlanta. There were founding members, Audrey Roy Greenfield, Esther Nam, Christine Chung, Jessica Stanton, Catherine Jamal, Sandy Strong, and Sophia Kirk Birkland. And it feels like they also had a very similar problem way back when, was just like, they all wanted to learn more about Python and they wanted to get a group together, particularly women, to kind of get this all going, because they also had a very similar problem where they were also going to these meetups and people were super nice, but they wanted to find people who were as passionate as them and who just happened to be women. And so Audrey wrote a grant in 2011 titled PyLadies, and it focused on these 3 areas: education, conference, and outreach. And then, of course, the PSF very well then approved it, and as PyLadies continues to champion the vision of diversity and inclusion as it relates to gender representation in Python. And so the Python community saw the need for a centralized and organized program to address this inequality. They're like, hey, that's great. So the PSF registered PyLadies and gave some grants to the first PyLadies group, which is PyLadies LA, to run its very first meetup in 2011. And from there, next slide. Yep, the PSF then became a fiscal sponsor for PyLadies, and thus PyLadies became an entity within the Python Software Foundation. So the very first chapter was Los Angeles, and if we go to the next slide, it started growing. Now this is the current map of all the PyLadies chapters, but imagine back in 2011, one chapter, which then grew to two chapters, the second chapter being in Melbourne, and then followed by DC, then San Francisco, which was started by Lynn Root in 2011. So it was starting to get popularity, and there became a clear need. When talking to Audrey about the very beginnings of PyLadies Los Angeles, she commented about how exciting it was for her and for the group to find like-minded individuals such as themselves to be able to geek out on talking Python with each other. Could you imagine a group of 7 ladies hanging out, eating delicious food, drinking nice beverages, and just saying, hey, what do you think about this Django documentation? It became something incredibly special. Next slide. And thus, we began scaling PyLadies. So Lynn here became a recipient of this lovely award for being a great volunteer, where she helped scale PyLadies as they accepted more and more chapters. From there, this group of amazing women set the groundwork to the very start, to the point where they even developed the mission statement, where it reads, we're an international membership group with a focus on helping more women become active participants and leaders in the Python open source community. Our mission is to promote, educate, and advance a diverse Python community through outreach, education, conferences, events, and social gatherings. PyLadies also aims to provide a friendly support network for women and bridge to a larger Python world. Anyone who has an interest in Python is encouraged to participate. Now, what a mission statement. From there, from the very beginning of Python 2011, with the effort of these 9 people, with a fiscally sponsored project by the PSF, started a global movement. And today, it is now an international mentorship group with a focus on helping women become more active leaders in Python. So, does this mission still reflect the needs of PyLadies today? Before we can evaluate if these 3 pillars of education, promotion, outreach have been successful, we need to reflect on what has worked and what has changed. So let's begin. I'm going to hand this off to Mariatta, where we're going to be celebrating our wins because we've come a very long way. Do you want to take it over, Mariatta?
Yes, I'm just trying to figure out how to unmute myself. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you.
We can slice that off.
Yeah, in the past 9 years, PyLadies has grown. We now have more than 90 chapters worldwide across numerous countries. Each of these chapters are volunteer-run. They run events and workshops targeting women audiences. PyLadies community provides the opportunity for women to learn from other women to help grow their career. Our community have helped grow a new generation of women speakers and open source contributors. And the impact? If we look at the history of gender diversity of PyCon US speakers, 9 years ago, only 1% of speakers of PyCon US were women. By 2016, 40% of PyCon US speakers were women, and this number has more or less remained consistent. We've asked our community members, PyLadies members and allies, of what PyLadies mean to them. Here are some of their answers. Madeline Campos from PyLadies Miami said, PyLadies means inclusion, support, knowledge sharing, safe learning environment, opportunity, and new friends. Vasiki Chauhan said, PyLadies is the only platform where I feel comfortable answering other people's programming questions. It's really hard to overcome the fear of being harshly judged about one's level of competence when you identify as a woman, and PyLadies goes a long way in helping me overcome that barrier. Guido van Rossum, the creator of Python, said, I heard PyLadies. Thank you all so much for making Python's community more diverse and not just the gender. I fancy myself as a feminist and an ally, but you do the hard work and make it stick. Way to go, PyLadies. If you remember 5 years ago at PyCon, Guido actually said in his keynote that by then, Python has existed for more than 20 years, yet by then, there was no female Python core developers at all. The Python Language Summit in that year had no female attendees at all. I was there listening to this speech in person, and I was able to attend PyCon that year only because of the financial aid provided by PyLadies. And some of you know that it was this very speech from 5 years ago that inspired me to start contributing to Python and eventually became a Python core developer. I believe that when women can see other women being present, participating in open source, when they can see themselves represented, they got inspired to do the same. And in the last 5 years, we've made progress. I am proud to share with you that this year's Python Language Summit was attended by 7 women, much better than before, and they all actively participating in the discussions. 3 of them gave presentations and lightning talks. While there are many things that have been trending upwards in moving the needle, such as inclusion of women and other marginalized communities in visible spaces like PyCon or into Python user groups, we still continue to see struggle with moving PyLadies into roles of active leadership in open source community. The current PyLadies model currently does not scale. And with that, I will pass this to Lorena.
Great. Thank you very much for setting that stage up. I know that the hard work that our community has done on really having a very deep conversation around what is a very hard topic, which is why aren't there more women in the room, particularly when it comes to core Python development, is not an easy one to have. And as we sit there and we think very critically about our successes and what has worked and what hasn't, one of the things as really the official arm of the Python Software Foundation looking at one level of inclusion around gender inclusion is obviously PyLadies. The problem with the model, however, that we see with PyLadies is that while very beneficial that PyLadies has this strong emphasis on autonomy, something that has also been problematic with this high emphasis on autonomy is that the grassroots movement that exists in one place may not have the same access to resources to help power their chapter as, say, Chicago versus maybe PyLadies chapters in other parts of the world that aren't in North America. So looking at kind of the duality of wanting to be grassroots led while also having strong emphasis on autonomy so that our local chapters can decide what works for them and best reflects the needs of their local community. One of the things we've had to think about was, well, you know, honestly, how are other people doing that? How are other groups actually building to think about what PyLadies communities means for them. Next slide, please. And one of the places that we've seen really, really exciting success with PyLadies has been in PyLadies Brazil. This past fall in 2019, I was able to participate with Carol Willing as an honorary member of PyLadies Brazil in the assembly that they have every year at Python Brazil. With about 26 chapters last time I checked throughout the country, PyLadies Brazil is a prime example showing how the grassroots approach to community actually does work and actually is succeeding. PyLadies Brazil founder Deborah Acevedo highlighted at the 2019 PyLadies Brazil Assembly that the organization has been able to grow. However, while they've been able to grow and get more chapters, one of the things that continues to be a bottleneck for them is sustaining members and having and retaining members, while also working on broader collective initiatives. Specifically, the problems that were being highlighted there led to, for example, a bottleneck in having access to funds. You know, without having access to such simple things as maybe money to be able to purchase a ticket, to be able to go to Python Brazil where these official events happen, PyLadies, you aren't able to really go beyond just that local conversation in your user group, if there is even a user group in your area. So this idea of having access to funds, that was a huge one that was being highlighted in the PyLadies Brazil Assembly. Also, another thing too that the Assembly called out was really just even the idea of saying, you know, how do we get started? If there's already not a strong community you can lean into, what kind of content should you be writing? What kind of content should you not only be writing and talking about, but you know, the number of hours it takes to actually create content too is a problem. So again, while the emphasis on having very strong local chapters allows you to control what kind of content you put into the world, essentially each time our PyLadies chapters are having to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. So this theme of wanting to have a sense of community that isn't just tied to your physical location, but is actually more of a kind of global dialogue, a global community, that message really, I think, resonates with me as someone who's been a PyLadies organizer for now over four and a half years. Next slide, please. So when we think about rebuilding the future, that really is a hard question, and it's one that has a lot of nuances. And I joke that sometimes my answer to things to things like how do we build for the future, I'm like, I don't know, it's complicated, it depends. So jokes aside, this theme here though that I've been seeing has been this tension between the duality of wanting to be a local first model while also building a global brand. And that global brand, I think this tension between local and global, I think really speaks to kind of some of the struggles that PyLadies has had in terms of what is that global identity? What is that global brand that we need to think about that works so well in our local chapter, but has limited us in really building this bigger initiative. So when we think about, you know, building for the futures, really, I think we need to start with a simple question, which is, what is it that PyLadies is building for? Next slide, please. This was a question that I have asked many people over time. And as Elaine mentioned in the beginning part of this talk, one of the people that I've turned to when I've had a lot of questions thinking about the evolution of the PyLadies model has been some of the early folks that have helped scale PyLadies to what it is today, specifically which is Lane Root, who's shown here selling us the agenda for the workshop that we held at PyCon US in 2019 that we titled The Future of Us. This workshop was something that, again, I've had these kind of conversations with people time after time about, you know, how do we better get people to work on PyLadies, like even the website, or how do we get better access to funds and things like that. But another thing that actually, I think, relit the fire to get this dialogue going was when New York City PyLadies organizer Rashama Sheikh wrote up a observation looking at some of the stagnation of diversity building, not only in Python but just in open source in general. Looking at that article, there was a lot of these themes that we're talking about succession planning, about building global kind of movements, and really leaning in and thinking about not only is diversity about, not only is it about getting a seat at the table, but it's also about, it really is us investing in ourselves, and really it is also not, we want to retain people, basically. It's not just about getting a seat at the table. It's making sure that people, are actually being able to bring their authentic selves, share their words, and they are being heard, and they are being incorporated into the conversation. I've heard diversity and inclusion explained like this before. Diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. And I think that's a really good metaphor, because when we look at PyLadies, we've done so much great work within the Python space about creating space at the table, and thinking about what comes next. Those are the questions that are a lot harder to answer, and that's kind of what this workshop was meant to get at. So the purpose of this workshop, The Future of Us, the way that we organized it was we basically did as all good technical-minded people do. We wanted to use this workshop a little bit as a retro. So doing a retro on PyLadies, determining what our current challenges are, and then actually trying to rapid fire start proposing answers to those solutions. Folks that were in attendance were actually hand invited, since we were looking to get a breadth of different perspectives. And really the breadth of those different perspectives, what we wanted to make sure that we did on the other side of this workshop was take the conversation that we had and actually then start tying it to tangible goals that we could publish and start bringing to the community, to the larger community, so we can have more feedback. Next slide, please. So one of the things I think that made this workshop so successful, and really, I think a really good kind of, again, that moment where it relit the fire, was we were able to get a really great cross-section of folks to come together to have this conversation. In the photo here that we tweeted after we wrapped up the workshop, I think this just kind of speaks to some of the great kind of perspectives we were able to highlight in this conversation. So we had organizer Anwesha from India. We have Python Software Foundation director Marlene, who was able to kind of talk to us a little bit of some of the work that she's done around women and programming in the broader space of Africa. As we can see there, us three were there, so we had a good kind of smattering of people across North America, as well as folks from Latin America, from Europe, and really just getting people together to talk about things. It's amazing when you actually get people together to talk, how quickly things can start moving. So one of the things that from this workshop, that beyond just being really intentional about making sure that we were having a global population of people talking about what we want to build for the future of PyLadies, was also making sure that we actually had, like, what is the thing we're going to do next? because as we all know, making a big problem even bigger and then adding 300 steps, you're not going to get anywhere. We need to have something tangible that we can work towards. And really the big thing that we thought that we all were saying, that we know would be helpful, was we really need to start talking about a PyLadies global governance model. So on September 15, 2019, we opened a request for comment for the PyLadies governance model on GitHub. And then we did a write-up of the workshop on PyLadies.com. Next slide, please. So the governance model that we looked at, actually we spent some time researching and looking at other diversity and inclusion-minded groups in technology to kind of think about, what models have been proven to work, what models kind of align with this, with our core values. Again, core values really emphasizing having strong local leadership and not trying to create something that's so process heavy that it gets hard to do anything. And one of the groups that we were really inspired by was Our Ladies. Like PyLadies, Our Ladies is a group that has a lot of strong local chapters. They are a very grassroots minded organization. There isn't a necessarily like paid staff of people that works on it. So again, it's a lot of volunteers who are working on running this community. And that felt like a really good place for us to start. So what we see here with this request for comment model that we proposed is one of the things that we really wanted to make sure we did was, one, we want to make sure there's a group of people from across the globe that would sit in some kind of publicly elected seat of power, which we at the time were calling the Global Leadership Team. And that group would then be the voice to the Python Software Foundation. They would be the ones that actually are answering questions of like, how does my chapter, in Chicago get access to funds? So they're actually going to be people who will be talking about the bigger picture items. And then balanced alongside that, we have, as you can see, this list of project teams. So the project teams here ranging from finance, resources, to actually working on like our tech and marketing and code of conduct. All of those are meant to be project teams that are actually managed like open source efforts. So allowing people to, sometimes people want to get involved with PyLadies, but not as a speaker, not as a event host. Maybe they don't want to organize, but they want to help with something specific because that's where their passion lies. Again, back to kind of volunteer-minded, allowing people to have the ability to work on things that they are passionate about. That's what these project teams have been meant to that's what these project teams are meant to focus on. So this global leadership model, actually putting in a group of people that are steering the ship, keeping us moving forward, while also allowing more moments and ways for meaningful engagement for PyLadies. That right here is why we came up with this model. Next slide, please. So cool, we had the 2019 workshop. We started some of these project teams. We actually had a dialogue with our community around how do we want, what kind of governance model should we have? What comes next? We've got to pick our global, what we now call the global council, and we're actually have been doing so much work in thinking about how we can get, again, really strong emphasis on wanting to have that global representation. How can we get people from across the world that are part of PyLadies to actually participate in this? And one of the things that we did a write-up on the entire, what is this governance model? What is going to be this global council, and how can you participate in the election? We did a lot of really good work in getting it translated. So between the Python translation list, between PyLadies community members, and just us finding people that can help us do some translation, actually, which got done really quick, and I was really impressed. Thank you, Python. But we were able to actually do this call out in 6 languages. 6. Yes, 6. 6 plus English. So 7, my bad. But so we have in Arabic, in Chinese, specifically Mandarin, French, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. So we're doing this call out and trying to meet people in their language of comfort and their language of choice to publicize this. And another thing that we did is we baked into the Global Council a regional requirement. So one of the things here, you can see the diversity and inclusion requirements, is that basically we don't want there to be like all 9 people from the United States. That's not something that's going to actually help us get that global brand that we really want. So instead, we've put a requirement saying that no more than 33% of the board can reside in the same country. So that, for example, if we were trying to have 4 people from the United States, nope, that won't fly because we have 9 seats and we max at 3 folks that reside in the United States. Other things about diversity and inclusion that we're thinking about, and we definitely know we can iterate on, again, thinking about access to language, and obviously there's a lot of other things that can enter this conversation, but to start, we're going to look at the regional and allow that initial cohort of the Global Council team to kind of iterate on policies they think would be good to continue to hold us accountable in making this team as inclusive and as diverse as possible. Next slide, please. So another thing, the only other thing that we have also instituted beyond a regional requirement is we actually are going to have we'll have some number of seats that are going to be selected through public election, and then we have some seats that are going to be where people can actually apply for them. The idea here of what we're thinking about is obviously, as we understand when it comes to campaigning, sometimes name recognition is a thing. And if that's great. We have a lot of really exciting people in our community, but unfortunately with name recognition, that could be biased towards people that, have been around for a long time. And maybe, again, another thing that we want to think about is having PyLadies that are at different points in their career being able to be a part of this group as well, because they are just as awesome. So again, kind of like allowing different ways to do that. And again, in a democratic fashion, we brought these proposals for how to run the election to our organizers for our PyLadies chapters, and overwhelmingly everyone said, yes, let's do a dual kind of application or election. And that's what we're going to be doing. Next slide, please. So all this to say, it's been an awesome year, and while we were really hoping to do some more content around this at PyCon US in person, we definitely are trying to be present and answer questions as best as we can for people. So please do kind of keep an eye out for some opportunities through the PyLadies Twitter and the PyLadies website about how you can learn more about the election. But drum roll, please. Next slide. I am here to announce that we've got the website up. So PyLadies.github.io. The slides, the font might be a little hard to read, but if you go to that, you can then click on the election section or nominate. Again, nominate meaning you want to actually apply to be a member on the board. Election meaning you want to run in a public election. As Mariatta had mentioned, we do actually have a PyLadies registration membership form. You can register as a basic member or as a voting member. Voting members, just like the Python Software Foundation Board of Directors election, those will be the folks that have access to voting. So if you want to know how to vote, on the website here, you can learn about that, specifically who can vote. We've got the registration for our members also linked here. As you can see, we have it in all the languages again. But specifically the election calendar, we're going to have an open call for council members starting on May 6th. And this timeline is the exact same timeline as the Board of Directors election for the PSF. And next slide, please. And this just leads, I think, all of us to say, I'm sure that, I know I can speak for all three of us when we say, thank you so much, everyone who has helped us, be it you've been in those monthly meetings with us, be it you respond to my, I know I like to send people a lot of messages all the time, or you helped us with translation. We all together make Python and the PyLadies community better. So we just want to say from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. And next slide, please. And if you would like to stay in touch with us, we've got a few places. So you can join us on Slack, and that Slack is open to anyone, but we do have a PyLadies code of conduct that you will be prompted about when you register, but you can go to slack.pyladies.com. You can join us on GitHub. Again, we have an interim global group that meets monthly. And if you look at that global organizing repo, there's a monthly issue that anyone can add stuff to. So, if you had a question, like if there's a topic or something you wanted to bring to that group, you can throw it there. Stay in touch with us on Twitter. And remember, you can register as a PyLadies member. So that bit.ly PyLadies membership registration, the bit.ly link that is for these slides, you can use that just to come back and look at all these resources. And next slide, please. And that is our talk. Again, here's all of our contact information if you would like to reach us. It's pretty easy. It's our first name at PyLadies.com. Thank you so much for your time today.